My name is Natalie Williams, and I am 28 years old. As I drove toward my childhood home, my palms were sweating against the steering wheel. 5 years of absence, and now I was returning with colonel insignia hidden in my bag. My family had always dismissed my military career as nothing. Little did they know that tomorrow, at my father's company event, everything would change. I parked in the driveway, took a deep breath, and stepped out. Before I continue this story, I would love to know where you are watching from. Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button. Trust me, if you have ever been underestimated by family, this story will show you exactly how sweet vindication can taste. The moment I walked through the front door of my childhood home, I was struck by how nothing had changed. The same faded family photos lined the hallway, the same worn furniture occupied the living room, and the same judgment hung in the air. My small-town Montana upbringing was preserved like a time capsule, right down to the outdated curtains my mother Diana had always refused to replace. "Natalie, you made it," my mother called from the kitchen, not bothering to come greet me. Her voice carried the same subtle disappointment it always had when addressing me instead of my brother Gregory. I set my bag down and wandered through the house, trailing my fingers along familiar surfaces. My father Albert had worked at Pinnacle Defense Systems for over 30 years, climbing from engineer to senior executive through dedication and networking. Our family revolved around his career success and the shadow it cast for my brother to follow. "Your brother will be here soon," my mother informed me as I entered the kitchen. "He just got promoted again, you know. Senior project manager now." The pride in her voice was unmistakable, the kind she never used when discussing my career. "That is great," I replied, the words feeling mechanical after years of practice. "I will have to congratulate him." My mother continued preparing dinner, chattering about Gregory and his wife Megan, their new house, and all the corporate accomplishments that made them the golden children of our family. Not once did she ask about my life or career. I excused myself and headed upstairs to my old bedroom. Like everything else, it remained frozen in time. Cheerleading trophies from high school, academic awards, and college acceptance letters still decorated the walls and shelves. My parents had preserved everything from before I made my disappointing choice to join ROTC instead of pursuing a business degree. What they did not display were any acknowledgments of my military career. No photos of my commissioning ceremony. No shadow boxes of achieved ranks. No newspaper clippings about deployments or promotions. In their minds, I had wasted my potential the moment I chose service over corporate success. I sat on my childhood bed, running my hand over the familiar quilt, remembering the night I told them about my ROTC scholarship. My father had stared at me with such disappointment that I almost changed my mind. "The military is for people without options, Natalie," he had said. "You are smarter than that." Even then, they had been grooming Gregory to follow in my father's footsteps at Pinnacle. My brother had eagerly embraced the plan, thriving on the favoritism and using every opportunity to remind me how much more successful he would be. I opened my suitcase and carefully removed the garment bag containing my dress uniform. Tomorrow, Pinnacle Defense Systems would be hosting their annual leadership conference, and my father had mentioned that the CEO, Shannon Murphy, would be visiting their branch. What my family did not know was that I was now the military liaison for the $1.2 billion defense contract between the Army and Pinnacle, a position I had earned through years of dedicated service and expertise. My finger traced over the silver eagle insignia of my colonel rank, achieved faster than almost anyone in my division's history. At 28, I was one of the youngest colonels in the modern Army, specializing in cybersecurity defense systems, the very technology Pinnacle was contracted to develop. I carefully hung up my uniform in the closet, making sure it was hidden behind some old clothes. For tonight, I would endure one more family dinner of dismissal and condescension. Tomorrow would be different. The doorbell rang, announcing Gregory's arrival. I took a deep breath, squared my shoulders like I was heading into battle, and went downstairs to face my family. The dining room felt smaller than I remembered, constricted by the oversized personalities gathered around the table. My brother Gregory had arrived with his wife Megan, both dressed in expensive business casual attire that screamed corporate success. My cousin Tiffany had also been invited, which was no surprise. She worked as a finance director at a prestigious bank and was often held up as another example of what I should have aspired to be. "Natalie, you remember Tiffany," my mother said, as if we had not grown up together. "She just closed a multi-million-dollar deal for her bank." "Hi, Tiffany," I said, giving her a genuine smile. Unlike my immediate family, Tiffany had always been kind to me, even if she did not understand my choices. "It is good to see you, Nat," she replied, giving me a quick hug. "Been way too long." The initial conversation remained pleasant as we served ourselves from the dishes my mother had prepared. My father Albert sat at the head of the table, occasionally checking his phone for work emails despite my mother's disapproving glances. "So, Dad," Gregory began, predictably steering the conversation toward himself, "I wanted to tell you about the new project I am heading up. Shannon personally selected me to lead the team." My father beamed with pride. "That is my boy. Shannon Murphy does not hand out responsibilities lightly. You must have really impressed her." "Well," Gregory continued, shooting me a glance to make sure I was paying attention, "it is the same project you have been working on for years. Shannon says my fresh perspective might help move things along faster." I bit my tongue, knowing that the project was actually the Army contract I was now overseeing. If only they knew how much authority I actually had over the success or failure of Gregory's new position. My mother Diana immediately jumped in, eager to showcase Gregory's achievement. "Tell them about the staff you are managing now, dear." Gregory puffed up. 12 direct reports, including 2 senior engineers who have been with the company for over 20 years. They were not too happy about reporting to someone younger, but they got over it when they saw my results. "That is wonderful," my mother cooed, then turned to me with a thin smile. "Natalie, how is your job going? Are you still at the same rank?" The dismissive way she said job rather than career was not lost on me. "Things are going well," I replied simply, not willing to reveal my promotion yet. "Still a captain or whatever?" my father asked vaguely, not even knowing the correct progression of military ranks. "Something like that," I answered, taking a bite of mashed potatoes to avoid elaborating. "You know," my mother interjected, "Tiffany just bought a beautiful new condo downtown. 3 bedrooms with a gorgeous view of the mountains." Tiffany looked uncomfortable at being used as a comparison point again. "It is really not that impressive," she said graciously. "Just good timing in the market. Still," my mother continued, "it is nice to see young people establishing themselves properly, building equity instead of moving around every few years." The dig at my military lifestyle was clear. I had lived in 4 different states and 2 countries in the last 8 years, something my mother considered unsettled and immature. "Speaking of tomorrow," my father said, thankfully changing the subject, "the CEO is coming to review our branch. It is a big deal. Shannon Murphy does not visit regional offices often." "I have my presentation all ready," Gregory boasted. "Shannon already emailed me personally to say she is looking forward to my innovation proposal." "Is there anything special planned for the visit?" I asked innocently. My father nodded. "Full staff meeting, project reviews, and a special announcement about the military contract. Some colonel is supposed to come as the Pentagon liaison, but I doubt they will send someone that high-ranking. Probably just some major who will be impressed by our operation." I suppressed a smile. "That sounds interesting." "Not really," Gregory scoffed. "Military types never understand the business side of things. They just follow orders and check boxes." "Gregory," Tiffany said with a frown, "that is not fair." But my brother was on a roll now. "Come on. We all know the truth. The military is a fallback career. People who cannot cut it in the real competitive world hide behind ranks and regulations." My mother nodded in agreement. "We always knew you were so bright, Natalie. That is why it was such a disappointment when you chose that path." "What exactly do you think I do in the Army?" I asked, keeping my voice level. "Push papers, follow protocols," my father shrugged. "Important work, sure, but not exactly challenging for someone with your potential." "You will never be anything there," Gregory laughed. 10 years from now, You'll still be taking orders while I am running my own division." The words stung despite my accomplishments. Years of therapy had helped me recognize that my family's approval should not matter anymore, but old wounds ran deep. "I think Natalie made a choice that works for her." Tiffany attempted to defend me. "A waste is what it is." My mother sighed dramatically. "All that potential. Remember how all your teachers said you could run a company someday?" I pushed food around my plate as they continued dissecting my supposed failures and missed opportunities. The conversation moved on to Gregory's upcoming vacation to Hawaii, Megan's promotion at her law firm, and Tiffany's investment portfolio. No one asked about my recent deployment or the specialized training I had completed. As dessert was served, my father mentioned again how important tomorrow's meeting was for his career. 28 years I have put into Pinnacle. This contract could be what finally gets me to vice president. I nodded sympathetically, knowing that tomorrow would change everything, though not in the way he expected. Later that night, I retreated to my childhood bedroom, listening to the familiar sounds of the house settling. From down the hall, I could hear my parents still praising Gregory's achievements. "He really is exceptional," my mother was saying. "Shannon would be foolish not to see his potential for senior leadership." I closed my eyes, fingers tracing the colonel insignia I had slipped from my bag. Tomorrow could not come soon enough. Sleep evaded me as I stared at the glow in the dark stars still stuck to my ceiling, relics from a childhood when my potential had been measured differently. Back then, before Gregory started working at Pinnacle, before my decision to join the ROTC, my parents had seen something in me. But that changed the moment I chose a different path than the one they had planned. I remembered sitting at this same dining table during my sophomore year of college, ROTC brochure in hand, explaining how the program would pay for my education and provide a career path I found meaningful. "The military?" my father had asked, his face contorting as if I had suggested becoming a street performer. "That is for people who cannot get real jobs, Natalie." "It is a real job," I had countered. "And it is what I want." My mother had exchanged worried glances with my father. "But what about law school? Or business? You always said you wanted to work at Pinnacle someday."
No, they had always said that.
I had merely nodded along, trying to be the daughter they wanted. When I stood my ground, the subtle undermining began. My achievements in ROTC went unacknowledged. My commissioning as a second lieutenant was attended only by Tiffany, who drove 6 hours to be there when my parents suddenly had unavoidable work commitments. My father had Gregory's promotion to junior analyst at Pinnacle framed, while my military portrait remained in a drawer. Yet despite their dismissal, my career flourished. My aptitude for systems analysis and cybersecurity had been recognized early. By 23, I had been promoted to captain and assigned to a specialized unit developing defensive protocols against emerging cyber threats. By 26, I had reached major, after leading a task force that identified and neutralized a sophisticated attack on military infrastructure, saving countless classified documents and potentially lives. Captain Eleanor Grant had been my first true mentor, seeing potential in me that my family refused to acknowledge. "Williams," she had said after a particularly grueling training exercise, "you think differently than the others. That is going to take you places." Under her guidance, I learned to trust my instincts and leverage my unique perspective. When a routine security audit revealed patterns others missed, Eleanor encouraged me to pursue it further. The investigation ultimately uncovered a coordinated attempt to breach multiple defense systems. The operation I subsequently led earned me an early promotion to lieutenant colonel and put me on the Pentagon's radar. Eleanor, by then a brigadier general, had personally recommended me for the Pinnacle liaison position. "They are developing next-generation security protocols," she had explained. "We need someone who understands both the technical and strategic implications. Someone who can speak the language of both military and corporate worlds." When she pinned the silver eagle of full colonel to my uniform just 3 weeks ago, the ceremony was attended by generals and Pentagon officials, but not my family. I had not even told them about the promotion. Years of dismissal had taught me to stop seeking their approval. "Colonel Williams," General Eleanor had said afterward, "I hope you realize what an achievement this is. youngest colonel in the Cyber Command's history. I did realize it, but tomorrow would be the first time my family would understand what I had truly accomplished. The pinnacle contract was massive. $1.2 billion for developing advanced cybersecurity systems for military applications. As liaison, I had final approval on all major decisions, technical specifications, and budget allocations. In the most literal sense, I would be overseeing my father's and brother's work. The irony was almost too perfect. For years, they had belittled my career choice, and now I held significant influence over the project that could determine their professional futures. I got out of bed and removed my uniform from the garment bag. The midnight blue fabric was immaculate, brass buttons gleaming even in the dim light of my childhood bedroom. I ran my fingers over the rows of ribbons and medals, each representing missions, achievements, and sacrifices my family knew nothing about. The silver eagle insignia caught the light as I turned the uniform jacket in my hands. I remember my father once saying, "Ranks do not mean anything in the real world, Natalie. Out here, it is about what you can do, not what title they give you." He would learn tomorrow that in my world, this rank was earned through proving exactly what I could do, repeatedly, under pressure, and against overwhelming odds. I meticulously inspected every detail of my uniform, checking for loose threads or spots that needed attention. The ritual calmed me, the familiar routine grounding me against the emotional turbulence of being home. By the time dawn broke, I had moved past the hurt of yesterday's dinner. The uniform hung ready, my hair was precisely pinned according to regulation, and my resolve was firm. Today, Colonel Natalie Williams would report for duty, not the disappointing daughter they thought they knew. I dressed with practiced efficiency, each button and pin placed with precision. The person in the mirror reflected confidence, authority, and purpose. No trace remained of the insecure girl who had once desperately sought her parents' approval. As I pinned the colonel insignia to my collar, I reminded myself that this moment was not about revenge. It was about finally allowing my family to see me as I truly was, for better or worse. If they could not accept my success on my terms, that would be their loss, not mine. I checked my watch, a gift from General Eleanor. It was time. The company event would begin in an hour, and I needed to arrive early to coordinate with the security team. Downstairs, I heard my parents and Gregory preparing to leave separately. They had no idea I would be joining them, much less in what capacity. I waited until I heard their cars pull away before heading downstairs and out to my own vehicle. The drive to Pinnacle Defense Systems took less than 15 minutes. I used the time to center myself, reviewing key points about the contract I would be discussing today. This was not just about showing my family who I had become. It was about ensuring a critical national security project received the oversight it required. As I pulled into the reserved parking spot marked Military Liaison, I straightened my uniform one last time. The weight of responsibility settled comfortably on my shoulders, far more natural than the weight of family expectations ever had. It was time to step into the role I had earned, regardless of who might be watching. The Pinnacle Defense Systems headquarters loomed before me, a gleaming monument to corporate success and military-industrial partnership. The glass and steel structure housed some of the most advanced technology development in the country, including the cybersecurity systems I was now responsible for overseeing. Security at the entrance was tight, as expected for a facility with multiple classified projects. I approached the guard station, where two security officers straightened immediately upon noticing my uniform and rank. "Good morning, Colonel," the first guard said, instantly recognizing the silver eagle on my shoulder. "May I see your identification, please?" I presented my military ID and project authorization. "Colonel Natalie Williams, Pentagon Liaison for Project Aegis." The guard's eyes widened slightly as he processed my clearance. "Yes, ma'am. You are expected in the main conference room. Would you like an escort?" "That will not be necessary. I know the way." In truth, I had studied the building layout extensively before arriving. As I walked through the security checkpoint, I could feel the atmosphere shift. Military officers of my rank rarely visited regional offices, and certainly not ones as young as me. Employees stopped mid-conversation as I passed, some nodding respectfully, others clearly curious about my